Rick Perry's a Christian. He's an evangelical Christian, a follower of Jesus Christ. Mitt Romney's a good moral person, but he's not a Christian. Mormonism is not Christianity. It has always been considered a cult by the mainstream of Christianity. So it's the difference between a Christian and a non-Christian.
Well, we're back. That was Pastor Robert Jeffress and his attack on Mormonism just after he introduced Rick Perry at the Values Voters Summit here in Washington last Friday. And it looks like Jeffress may have to answer for this attack on Catholicism last year. Let's listen.
Much of what you see in the Catholic Church today doesn't come from God's Word. It comes from this cult-like pagan religion. You say, well, now, Pastor, how can you say such a thing? That is such an indictment of the Catholic Church. After all, the Catholic Church talks about God and the Bible and Jesus and the blood of Christ and salvation. Isn't that the genius of Satan?
Wow, the Jesus of Satan, the Catholic Church. Rick Perry ended up distancing himself from Jeffress's comments on Mormonism, but will Perry now have to cut ties with Jeffress over the Catholic comments? Bill Donahue is head of the Catholic League, and he is calling for Perry to make a break with the pastor. Your thoughts about these two? He seems like the word cult comes to mind quickly with this guy to his lips.
Well, the word cult obviously bespeaks a certain ignorance on the part of Jeffress, which may be corrected through education. But when he basically says the Catholic Church is infected by Satan, that's not something you're going to affect by education. That's a deep-seated visceral bigotry, and it has to be renounced by Rick Perry. I'm making it very clear. I don't hold Perry accountable for these remarks. In fact, I was told on a good trusted source today, my friend Tony Perkins, who's an eminently decent evangelical, that Perry had no knowledge of this, nor would he countenance this. So I want to make that separation. On the other hand, what Jeffress said is despicable, and Perry, I think, for his own good, ethically speaking, he should say, I want nothing to do with this guy again.
Well, let's look at a couple of things to start educating people, as you're trying to do now. We haven't been able to get polling on whether or not the evangelicals consider the Catholic faith part of Christianity or not, but the Pew Research Center has found the following. 76% of evangelical Protestant leaders view Catholicism's religious traditions in a favorable light, while only 24% view Catholics unfavorably. That's a pretty healthy 76%. So in terms of the attitudes of even the most fundamentalist preachers out there, they don't have a negative attitude towards the Catholic Church. So whether the word cult has made its rounds or not among that community or not, it is not a nasty attitude like I think their attitude is towards Mormonism. But I'm going to get to those numbers. Your thought about that, Bill?
Well, I think that, look, you're a Catholic, and we're both Catholics, and we grew up at a time when there was much more open bigotry coming from some Protestant circles. I think tremendous progress has been made. Certainly I've seen over the last 20 years. I was with Tony Perkins and Don Wildman and Dr. Richard Land and other evangelicals last week in Washington, D.C. Nothing like this came out of their mouth because they're not no more bigoted than you and I are. But there's still progress that has to be made. For some reason, there are still some people, I'm sure we have in the Catholic community too, who exercise a kind of bigotry toward others. It has to be condemned no matter who says it, but particularly in a presidential campaign.
Here's where you have an interesting point here. According to Lifeway Research, which falls under the Southern Baptist Convention, Protestant pastors do not hold favorable views of Mormonism. The poll shows that 75% of Protestant pastors do not consider Mormons to be Christians, and the number increases among evangelical pastors to 82%. So here's the conundrum here, Bill, that among the pastors themselves, 82%, 4 out of 5, don't consider Mormonism to be Christian. So when you have Jeffress out there, of course the words like cult are obviously meant to be nasty, but what do you make of their ideological or theological belief that Mormons are just not Christians? Are they right to say that?
I'll be quite honest with you. That doesn't bother me. I mean, people who are Buddhist and Hindu and Islam, we all have different religions. We should respect the right of other people to practice it. What bothers me is when you get into disparaging language. That's what bothers me, not the theological differences. God bless them.
And I think in parlance in our country, the word cult, we think of Manson.
Right.
So let's remember, we start using words like that in public. We better be careful. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you so much.
On this one, we agree.